Your mind is a factory, and every thought is raw material. If you pour in doubt, fear, gossip, and negativity, don't expect wealth, don't expect legacy, because the output will always match the input. Millionaires don't just guard their money, they guard their mind. They choose ideas of discipline, creativity, faith, and vision, and from those ingredients, wealth is produced. Generational wealth begins not with dollars, but with thoughts that shape decisions, habits, and character. Protect your factory. Feed it wisdom, not trash. Because the life you live tomorrow will be built from the thoughts you choose today. Let me share with you something I discovered early on that changed my entire direction with money and life. Wealth doesn't begin with dollars, it begins with discipline. You could hand someone $1 million today, but without the discipline to manage it, they'd be broke again in a few short years. On the other hand, you could take a person with modest income but strong discipline, and over time, that person becomes wealthy, not just in money, but in security, confidence, and peace of mind. It's not about how much comes in, it's about what you do with what comes in. That's the first secret. When I first started working, I didn't have much. In fact, I was broke and embarrassed, wondering how other people were getting ahead while I was falling behind. Then I was taught something simple. Don't try to manage more money until you've learned to manage the little you already have. That struck me. Most people say, if only I earned more, then I'd save, then I'd give, then I'd invest. But that's not how it works. If you won't do it with $1, you won't do it with 10,000. The habit must come first, no matter the amount. Discipline is the seed, and wealth is the fruit. The strategy I learned was simple and practical. Live on 70% of your income. That means discipline your wants, trim the excess, and learn the art of contentment. Then save 10%. It's your safety net, your reserve for emergencies, your way of telling the future you that you cared enough to prepare. Invest 10%, because savings protect you, but investments grow you. Savings will make sure you're not destroyed when the storm comes, but investments will make sure the sun shines brighter when opportunity arises. And finally, give 10%. That part may seem unnecessary to some, but let me tell you, generosity is the secret circulation of wealth. When you give, you're not just helping others. You're training yourself to loosen the grip of greed and letting money flow back in surprising ways. I remember when I first started applying this, it wasn't easy. Dividing my small paycheck into those categories made me nervous. 70% for living didn't feel like enough. But the surprising thing was this. When I set those boundaries, I became more creative, more resourceful, and more thoughtful about my spending. I started noticing leaks in my budget I never cared about before, and within a year, the little I had saved and invested began to give me confidence. The numbers were small, but the feeling was big. I felt like I was finally in control of my money, not the other way around. So here's a practical step you can take starting today. Write down your income, whatever island, then divide it into those percentages. Set up your bank accounts in a way that supports the discipline, not fights it. Automate transfers so that 10% goes into savings, 10% into investments, and another 10% into a giving account before you even see the rest. If you never see it, you won't miss it, and your discipline will grow automatically. The important thing is not the exact amount. The important thing is establishing the habit. I can promise you this. If you begin this practice, years from now, you will look back and realize it wasn't the dollars that made you wealthy, it was the discipline. Because discipline is wealth in its seed form. Get the discipline right, and the dollars will come. When I was younger, I thought wealth was about me, my bills, my needs, my dreams. But as I grew, I began to understand that real wealth isn't measured in how much you can enjoy for yourself in a single lifetime. True wealth is generational. It's about leaving something behind that outlasts you, something that your children and even your grandchildren can lean on, learn from, and build upon. Millionaires don't just think in years, they think in generations. They know the future belongs to the planners, and they refuse to let their legacy be left to chance. I once met a man who built a fortune in his business. He drove the cars, lived in the house, and enjoyed the lifestyle. But when he passed, his family had nothing left but bills and disputes. He consumed it all in his time. Contrast that with another man I knew who built his wealth differently. He didn't just accumulate, he created systems. He invested in properties that would keep generating income. He taught his children how to manage money, and he set up trusts that would keep paying out long after he was gone. Which man was truly wealthy? The one who lived large for a moment, or the one whose children and grandchildren continued to thrive because of his vision? The answer is obvious. Here's the strategy. You must think beyond your own lifetime. Assets, like real estate, businesses, or investment funds can outlive you if you structure them properly. But even more important than the money are the teachings, the philosophy, the values you pass on. If your children inherit wealth but not wisdom, the wealth will vanish. But if they inherit wisdom along with wealth, it multiplies. I've always believed that leaving money without instruction is a recipe for disaster. It's like handing someone a powerful tool without teaching them how to use it. But if you leave both the tool and the teaching, you give them the power to build further. I practiced this myself by putting my lessons in writing. I didn't just want to hand my family the results of my labor. I wanted them to know the principles behind it. How to discipline income, how to invest steadily, how to live within means, how to give generously. Those teachings became part of the inheritance, and I can tell you they are worth more than the dollars. The dollars can be spent, but wisdom pays forever. So here's something you can do. Starting today, write down what financial habits, lessons and values you want your children, your family, or your mentees to inherit. Don't leave it vague or unsaid. Write it, speak it, share it. Alongside that, start building assets that have continuity. Assets that don't disappear when you do. A business that can run without you, an investment account that grows beyond your years, a trust that provides for the future. And don't underestimate the power of small beginnings. Even if you start with just a modest investment, what matters is that you've begun to think generationally, not just personally. Because in the end, wealth isn't about how much you gather in your lifetime. It's about how much good continues after you're gone. Think in generations, not just years, and you'll not only change your life, you'll change your family's destiny. One of the greatest discoveries I ever made about wealth was this: money flows best when it flows through you. At first, I didn't understand that. I thought the secret to wealth was holding on tight, guarding every dollar, and keeping it safe. But I soon realized that money is like water. When it flows, it refreshes, nourishes, and multiplies. When it stagnates, it begins to rot. Generosity is not just a noble act. It's one of the wisest financial decisions you can make. Giving multiplies your influence, opens unexpected doors, and brings opportunities you could never have engineered on your own. I learned this the hard way. When I was broke, I used to say, if I ever get some money, I'll start giving. But then I heard the challenge. If you won't give a dime out of a dollar, what makes you think you'll give 100,000 out of a million? Giving isn't about the amount, it's about the principle. It's about training yourself to trust that what you release returns in multiplied form. When I first started putting aside a portion of my little income for giving, I was nervous. It felt like a loss. But soon I noticed something. The more I gave, the more my life expanded, not always in the exact dollar I gave, but in new relationships, new ideas, new business, new confidence. Generosity made me bigger inside, and wealth always follows expansion. The strategy here is to make generosity part of your financial plan, not an afterthought. Most people wait until they've paid the bills, spent their money, and if anything is left, they give. But by then, nothing is left. That's why I encourage you to design your budget with giving at the top, not the bottom. Just as you plan to save and invest, plan to give. Whether it's 5%, 10%, or more, decide it in advance and treat it as non-negotiable. By making giving a consistent part of your financial life, you're aligning yourself with one of the most powerful laws of prosperity, the law of circulation. I've seen people transform their lives by adopting this principle. I once mentored a young man who was struggling financially. His instinct was to hold back, to cling to every penny. But I challenged him to commit 10% of his small income to causes that mattered to him. He thought it was impossible, but he tried. A year later, not only had his income doubled, but his network had expanded, and his opportunities had multiplied. He told me, "It felt like the world opened up when I opened my hand." That's no coincidence. Giving changes you, and when you change, everything else changes. So here's a practical step. Commit right now to giving 5 to 10% of your income. It doesn't have to be large in dollar amount, but it must be consistent. Support a cause, help a family, mentor someone, invest in the community. When you give, don't just think about the money leaving your hand. Think about the cycle it enters. Think about the influence you're gaining, the gratitude you're creating, and the opportunities that will find their way back to you. Because the truth is this, wealth isn't just measured by what you keep, it's measured by what flows through you to others. Generosity doesn't subtract from your wealth, it multiplies it. When I first started thinking seriously about wealth, I thought the only currency that mattered was money. But the more I studied successful people, the more I realized their first and most precious currency wasn't money at all, it was time. Wealthy people don't just manage their dollars, they master their hours. Poor people waste time the same way they waste money, and the loss compounds in the same painful way. Spend a day on distractions, you lose a day. Spend a decade on the wrong pursuits, you lose a fortune. Time is unforgiving, but it's also the most powerful investment you have if you learn to treat it right. When I was broke, it wasn't just my bank account that was empty, it was my schedule. I spent hours on things that didn't move me forward. Idle talk, meaningless entertainment, chasing quick pleasures. Then one day, I heard the phrase, "Time is more valuable than money." You can always get more money, but you can never get more time. That shook me awake. It forced me to start asking, where is my time going? What am I trading my hours for? Because every hour is an exchange. If you waste it, it's gone forever. If you invest it, it pays dividends for years. The strategy is clear. Treat every hour as if it were $1, or even better, as if it were a seed. Each hour can be planted into something that grows, a skill that increases your value, a relationship that expands your opportunities, or a project that builds your future. The wealthy don't spend their hours randomly. They allocate them like investors, deliberately, strategically, and with long-term results in mind. That doesn't mean you can't rest or enjoy life, but even rest is purposeful when it recharges you for greater productivity. I began tracking my time just like I tracked my money, and what I found shocked me. Whole hours each day were disappearing. with nothing to show for them, that awareness was the beginning of change. I redirected just one wasted hour each day into reading, studying, and building. And you know what happened? That 1 hour compounded into skills, knowledge, and eventually opportunities that changed my income, my business, and my future. Just 1 hour a day of focused effort, over time, created a completely different trajectory. That's the magic of time invested wisely. It multiplies. So here's the practical step. For 1 week, track your time. Be brutally honest with yourself. Write down where every hour goes. Then choose just one wasted hour each day and redirect it into a wealth-building activity. Read a book that expands your financial intelligence. Learn a new skill that increases your value. Call someone who could open a door for you. Or work on a project that compounds over time. You don't need to overhaul your entire schedule overnight. Just reclaiming 1 hour a day can alter your future dramatically. Remember this: time is the first currency of wealth. If you squander it, no amount of money will make you rich. But if you master it, even modest money will multiply into lasting success. One of the most powerful lessons I ever learned about wealth is this: compounding is the silent partner of millionaires. You may not see it, you may not feel it at first, but it's always working in the background. Compounding takes small, consistent investments and, given time, turns them into something extraordinary. Most people underestimate it because they want quick results. But the wealthy understand that compounding is a patient game. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It doesn't sprint, it walks. But over the years, its quiet steps add up to incredible distances covered. When I was young and broke, I thought the answer to wealth was in one big break, one lucky deal, one huge opportunity. But I soon learned the truth. Wealth doesn't usually arrive in a lump sum. It grows like a tree, from small seeds planted and faithfully watered. I remember putting aside small amounts in investments and feeling almost foolish. The growth was invisible at first, pennies turning into nickels, nickels into dimes. But over the years, I began to see the magic. Those pennies weren't just pennies, they were workers, multiplying silently. The longer I let them work, the harder they worked for me. And the day came when what had started as small and ordinary became large and extraordinary. That's the magic of compounding. The strategy is simple but requires discipline. Reinvest your profits instead of spending them. Resist the temptation to cash out early and start as soon as possible. Time is the multiplier in this equation. The earlier you begin, the greater the reward. The wealthy know that compounding doesn't reward those who dabble or quit. It rewards those who commit and stay patient. $1 compounded wisely is worth more than $10 squandered quickly. That's why those who treat compounding like a lifelong partner find themselves enjoying its rewards when others are left wishing they had started sooner. Here's how I applied it. I set up accounts where money went automatically each month. I treated it like a bill I had to pay, except it was a bill to my future self, and I left it alone. I didn't touch it when I was tempted by wants. I didn't sabotage it when I felt impatient. I let time do its work. Looking back, some of the greatest results in my financial life came not from brilliance or big moves, but from this quiet discipline of letting compounding run its course. So here's your practical step. Open one long-term compounding account, stocks, mutual funds, or a retirement plan, and automate monthly contributions. Don't wait until you have a big amount to start. Start with what you have now. The important thing isn't size, it's consistency. Even a small automatic contribution grows enormous when compounded over decades. And most importantly, don't interrupt it. Compounding works best when left undisturbed. The truth is, compounding is like planting a tree. You don't see much in the first year, but over time, roots grow deep, branches spread wide, and fruit appears season after season. Millionaires don't rely on miracles, they rely on compounding. And if you make it your silent partner, it will serve you faithfully, quietly, and abundantly for the rest of your life. Wealth is far more than the dollars in your bank account or the assets you accumulate. True wealth is legacy. It's what you leave behind in values, opportunities, and the structures that empower others long after you are gone. Too many people focus only on lifestyle, chasing cars, vacations, and instant gratification, thinking that wealth is measured by what they can consume today. But the wealthy, the truly successful, understand that lifestyle fades, possessions depreciate, and money spent can vanish in a moment. What lasts is what you build for others, the lessons, the principles, the mindset, and the systems that give your family, your mentees, and your community the tools to thrive. I remember starting out barely able to make ends meet, yet I realized that if I ever wanted true wealth, it would have to be something that lived beyond me. It wasn't enough to earn money. I had to become a source of knowledge, wisdom, and opportunity for those I loved. I began writing down the lessons I wanted my children to inherit, not just about money, but about work ethic, integrity, and responsibility. I shared the habits that helped me grow, the mindset shifts that made the difference, and the practical steps that allowed me to turn ideas into results. That act alone began creating a foundation that no market crash, no economic downturn could ever erase. The strategy is simple but profound. Don't just leave money, leave understanding. Teach your family principles of financial responsibility alongside the assets themselves. Show them how wealth is generated, how it multiplies, and, importantly, how it should be used to create value. Encourage contribution, philanthropy, and personal growth. Help them see that the greatest inheritance is not material. It's the ability to think clearly, act responsibly, and create impact. Here's a practical step you can take today. Write a wealth letter for your family. Include not only the assets you plan to pass on, but the lessons, principles, and vision you want them to carry forward. Share your philosophy on money, the habits that built it, and the mindset that preserves it. Make it a guide that future generations can reference, one that teaches them how to think about money as a tool, not a trophy. When you do this, you ensure that your wealth is not measured by what you spent, but by the lives you shape. Legacy, my friends, is the truest form of wealth. To truly increase your income, you must first increase your value. Too many people chase money without realizing that money is simply a reflection of the value they provide to the world. The marketplace rewards those who solve problems, create opportunities, and contribute in ways others cannot easily replicate. Early in my journey, I was struggling financially, and I thought more money would solve my problems. But the truth hit me like a lightning bolt. If I didn't grow, if I didn't become more capable, more skilled, more reliable, more resourceful, I would never see the income I desired. Income follows value, not desire. The philosophy is simple. Money doesn't make a person wealthy, value does. The more indispensable your skills, the more trusted your reputation, the more others rely on your insight, the more you naturally attract compensation, opportunities, and influence. I realized that to earn more, I had to learn more, read more, listen more, observe more. I had to build expertise that could not be ignored, cultivate relationships that multiplied my reach, and refine habits that amplified my productivity. In essence, my growth had to precede my gain. The strategy then is to focus relentlessly on self-education and personal growth. Identify the unique problems you can solve, the skills that make you indispensable, and the contributions that have lasting impact. Read books that expand your thinking, take courses that refine your craft, seek mentors who have walked the path ahead, and immerse yourself in environments that challenge you to grow. Every skill acquired, every insight gained, every relationship nurtured compounds into value that others recognize and reward. Here's the practical step you can implement immediately. Write down 3 ways you can add more value at work or in your business this month. Be specific. What will you do that creates measurable impact, that eases someone else's burden, that enhances a process, that solves a pressing problem? Then commit to these actions daily, refining them, tracking progress, and asking for feedback. The key is consistent execution. Value is built by doing, not merely planning. As you increase your value, income follows naturally, and with it comes not just wealth, but credibility, influence, and the ability to shape your own destiny. Your growth is the precursor to your prosperity. Let me share something crucial about wealth. It isn't about how much money flows into your pocket. It's about where that money goes. Many people live paycheck to paycheck, and even when they earn more, they never get ahead. Why? Because they spend everything on things that lose value: cars, gadgets, clothes, vacations, and call it living. True wealth is built when income becomes assets, not expenses. Every dollar you earn can either work for you or vanish. I learned this lesson the hard way in my early years, when I saw peers with modest incomes amass debts disguised as status, while those who understood the principle quietly built lasting wealth. The philosophy is clear. Money should buy things that grow, not things that rot, rust, or depreciate. An asset is anything that puts money in your pocket today or tomorrow. Investments, businesses, intellectual property, even the skills that increase your earning potential. Expenses, on the other hand, take money out of your pocket without creating future value. The wealthy know the difference, and they make every purchase a conscious decision. When I first started practicing this, I resisted flashy cars and unnecessary luxuries, and instead put that money into books, courses, and small business opportunities. At the time, it felt sacrificial, but years later, those decisions multiplied my financial freedom far beyond what a fancy purchase could ever provide. The strategy, then, is to delay lifestyle inflation. Don't let your spending rise just because your income rises. Prioritize acquiring assets first, even if it means making temporary sacrifices. Every dollar invested wisely compounds, while every dollar spent on depreciation disappears silently but surely. The discipline to distinguish between assets and liabilities is what separates those who build wealth from those who merely earn and spend. Here's a practical step you can implement immediately. Before your next purchase, ask yourself a simple but powerful question. Will this make me money or cost me money in the long run? If it doesn't produce value, delay it. Redirect that money to an asset and watch how the small, consistent choices grow into real wealth over time. Your income is your seed. Let it grow. Don't let it rot. Let me tell you something about wealth that most people overlook. Ownership is where true financial power begins. Too many people spend their lives renting, not just homes, but ideas, resources, and opportunities. Renting may seem convenient, but it consumes your money without creating lasting value. Every month that rent check leaves your hands, you gain shelter for the day, but nothing for the future. True wealth is built when you shift from renting to owning, When you acquire assets that appreciate, produce income, and build security for decades to come. Ownership is more than property. It's equity. It's influence. It's freedom. When I was younger, I watched people toil in jobs, pay rent, and never gain a foothold. I realized that if I wanted to create lasting wealth, I needed to stop renting my life to circumstances and start owning it. That meant buying property instead of renting apartments, starting ventures instead of working solely for others, and investing in things that could grow while I slept. The philosophy is simple. Ownership puts you in control. Renting keeps you dependent. Owning creates equity. Renting only produces expenses. The strategy is to prioritize ownership in every form that matters. Whether it's your home, a business, or an income-producing investment, focus your energy and resources on acquiring what you can control and leverage. Each piece of property or business you own becomes a foundation for future wealth. And ownership doesn't just protect your money, it magnifies it. When I purchased my first small piece of property, I realized the monthly mortgage payments were building an asset I could sell, rent, or leverage. Renting would have only drained my finances. Here's a practical step you can take right now. Identify one major expense you are currently renting, whether it's housing, equipment, or a skill resource, and create a 5-year plan to transition it to ownership. Break it down into savings, timelines, and actionable steps. Every month, make progress toward owning, because when you own, your money works for you instead of vanishing into someone else's pocket. Shift your mindset from temporary convenience to lasting control, and you'll see how ownership multiplies both wealth and security. Let me share something that separates the wealthy from the rest. They don't let lifestyle dictate their financial decisions. They let cash flow dictate lifestyle. Too many people work hard, earn a paycheck, and immediately spend it on comforts, gadgets, or fleeting luxuries. That's backwards. True financial freedom begins when your assets generate the income to support the lifestyle you desire. When your money works for you, instead of you working for money, life changes profoundly. I've seen countless people toil tirelessly, yet they remain trapped in a paycheck-to-paycheck cycle because they confused earnings with wealth. The philosophy is simple. Cash flow is the engine of freedom. Wealth isn't measured by the size of your paycheck, but by the streams of income that flow into your life consistently, whether you're present or not. When I first began building my own business, I understood that labor alone had limits. Your hours are finite, your energy has boundaries, but assets can work 24/7. A well-chosen rental property, a dividend stock, or a business system can produce income long after the initial effort, providing security, flexibility, and leverage that a salary alone never can. The strategy is to focus on assets that generate income consistently. Don't chase toys or immediate gratifications before your foundation is secure. Look for investments or systems that will create recurring revenue and compound over time. Each month, as cash flow grows, you gain freedom, confidence, and the ability to expand your wealth further. When I purchased my first income-generating property, the rent covered expenses, created surplus, and allowed me to reinvest. Everything multiplied because the cash flow was already in motion. Here's a practical step. Identify one asset this month that can produce ongoing cash flow, a dividend-paying stock, a rental unit, or a small business system, and commit to acquiring or building it. Automate it if possible, track its performance, and reinvest the returns. Let your money earn money, and let your assets create the lifestyle you desire. Focus on cash flow first, and luxuries will follow naturally, without jeopardizing your financial future. Let me tell you something very few understand. Wealth is a test of character more than a measure of money. Too often, people confuse success with superiority, and arrogance sneaks in quietly. I've seen countless individuals rise quickly, only to watch their fortunes slip because they stopped learning, stopped listening, and began believing that money made them wiser or better than others. True wealth, the kind that lasts, is built not on ego, but on humility. Humility keeps you open to new ideas, protects you from mistakes, and ensures that what you build today isn't lost tomorrow. The philosophy is simple. Arrogance destroys faster than poverty ever could. A person who believes they know it all is blind to risks, blind to opportunities for growth, and blind to the lessons that life insists on teaching. Humility, on the other hand, allows you to keep learning, to keep expanding, and to keep protecting what you've worked so hard to achieve. It reminds you that money is a tool, a servant, not a master. If you serve it well, it can multiply and create freedom. If it serves you, you are doomed to chase it endlessly. The strategy is to remain grounded no matter your achievements. Reinforce the habit of continuous growth. Read, study, seek mentors, and never stop improving. Recognize that every level of success carries hidden traps, and only humility allows you to navigate them effectively. Wealth is not just a reflection of how much you earn, but how wisely you manage it, how much you contribute, and how little you let pride compromise your decisions. Here's the practical step. Take a moment to reflect on where success may have made you complacent or overly confident. Write down one area in your business, finances, or personal life where you might have allowed pride to interfere. Then take immediate corrective action, seek advice, invest in learning, or make a disciplined change. This one step keeps you sharp, protects your wealth, and ensures that your success continues to grow, not vanish. Humility isn't weakness. It's the strongest foundation of lasting prosperity. Let me share something I've learned the hard way. Making money is only half the battle. You can earn a fortune, but if you don't know how to retain it, it slips through your fingers like sand. Wealth is not measured solely by your income, but by your ability to hold on to it, multiply it, and make it work for you. I've met people who made tens of thousands in a week and were broke the next because they never learned to manage what they had. You see, earning without retention is like trying to fill a bucket full of holes. No matter how much water you pour in, it will drain away. The philosophy here is clear. Retention equals growth. You must master not just the art of earning, but the discipline of keeping, tracking, and multiplying. Every dollar has a story, and if you ignore where it goes, you're essentially giving away pieces of your future. Wealth isn't built on luck, it's built on understanding the flow of money and plugging the leaks that silently drain your life. Without this, your efforts, no matter how diligent, become ineffective. The strategy is simple but powerful. Know every dollar that comes in and every dollar that goes out. Make your money accountable. Budget, not as a restriction, but as a map to growth. Identify unnecessary spending, habits that drain resources, and impulsive choices that compromise your future. When you measure, you can manage. When you manage, you can multiply. Here's the practical step. Start today by creating a monthly budget. List every source of income and every expense, no matter how small. Look for one area where money is leaking unnecessarily and eliminate it this month. It could be subscriptions you don't use, repeated takeout meals, or impulse purchases. Plugging even one hole may seem minor, but it sets the stage for larger financial control. Retention is not just saving, it's about awareness, discipline, and preparation for opportunity. Begin this month and watch how small acts of financial mindfulness compound into lasting wealth. Let me tell you something I've seen far too often. Wealth passed down without guidance rarely lasts. Money alone does not create legacy. In fact, it can create chaos, entitlement, and loss if it comes without instruction. I've met heirs who inherited millions but squandered it within a few short years because nobody had taught them the principles behind the fortune. You see, money without wisdom is like a river without banks. It floods, it spreads, and eventually it disappears. True generational wealth comes not just from the dollars you leave behind, but from the knowledge, discipline, and values that accompany them. The philosophy here is simple. Inheritance without guidance can be more of a burden than a blessing. Wealth becomes a tool for growth and empowerment only when those who receive it know how to handle it responsibly. Without instruction, money can lead to poor choices, envy, or dependence. But when paired with clear guidance, principles, habits, and systems, it can multiply across generations, creating enduring freedom, opportunity, and purpose. I've always believed that the fortune you leave is as much about the mind and character as it is about the bank account. The strategy is clear. Don't just leave dollars, leave wisdom. Share your values, rules, and practical systems for managing money. Teach the habits that built your success, the mindset that protected your wealth, and the cautionary lessons of mistakes you made along the way. Wealth without instruction is like giving someone a car without teaching them to drive. The asset may be valuable, but it won't serve its purpose. Guidance ensures that every gift you pass on empowers rather than diminishes. Here's the practical step. Take time this month to write a personal wealth guide for your family. Outline not just what to do with the money, but why and the principles behind your choices. Include warnings against the traps you've seen or experienced, and advice on growth, discipline, and generosity. Make it a roadmap that teaches them how to preserve and multiply the inheritance responsibly. A thoughtful guide transforms a fortune into a lasting legacy. Ensuring your wealth serves as a blessing for generations, not just a fleeting gift. Let me leave you with this thought. Wealth, real wealth, is never simply about numbers on a balance sheet. It is about who you become in the process of earning it, managing it, and passing it on. Too many people chase money as if it alone will bring freedom, happiness, and influence, only to discover that without discipline, vision, and purpose, wealth slips through their fingers like sand. I've walked that road. I've seen people, even myself at times, who thought that more income alone would solve all problems, but it never does. True financial success begins with personal growth. It begins with learning how to control your habits, your time, your decisions, and your thinking. It begins with the understanding that every dollar is a tool and every hour is a seed. What you plant today determines the harvest of tomorrow. I want you to understand something critical. Building lasting wealth is not about luck. It's about principles. Principles that govern earning, saving, investing, giving, and passing on knowledge. Principles that ensure your financial house is built on rock, not sand. I've shared strategies that have worked for people from all walks of life. Discipline in living below your means, investing in skills before assets, leveraging compounding, turning income into assets, multiplying wealth through giving, and teaching your children or mentees the principles that matter most. These are not theories. They are proven steps that produce results when applied consistently. But knowing them is not enough. You must act. Knowledge without application is like a car without fuel. It will never take you anywhere. Think for a moment about your own life. Where are your leaks? Where are you losing opportunities for wealth? Is it in how you spend your time? How you spend your money? How you allow others to influence your thinking? Or perhaps in the habits you've never formed, the skills you've never learned, the relationships you've never nurtured? The truth is, wealth is built in small, deliberate actions compounded over time. A single wise decision, repeated day after day, week after week, year after year, creates results far beyond what you might imagine, but it requires patience, consistency, and courage. You must resist the temptation of shortcuts, the allure of instant gratification, and the voices that say it's too late or too hard. The wealth you seek is waiting on the other side of discipline. I've seen it happen over and over. Individuals who began with almost nothing, burdened with debt, doubt, and discouragement, transformed their lives through simple, consistent actions. They automated their savings, invested in knowledge, cultivated relationships, gave generously, and disciplined their time. They set goals not just for the next month or year, but for the next decade. And when setbacks came, and they always do, they didn't quit. They learned. They adjusted. They pressed forward. That is the hallmark of wealth that lasts. Resilience, growth, and the courage to keep building even when the results are not immediate. And now, it's your turn. I want you to make a decision. Not someday, not next week, but today. Decide to take control of your financial life, your time, and your habits. Decide to write down your goals, review your actions, and track your progress. Decide to build your skills, your reputation, your network, the invisible assets that compound just like money. Decide to multiply through giving, to turn income into assets, and to prepare your legacy for those who come after you. Decide to measure your results, correct your mistakes, and never stop learning. Wealth is a reflection of your decisions, and every moment presents a new opportunity to choose wisely. Remember this, you are not a spectator in your own life. You are the author. You are the builder. You are the one who decides whether your wealth is fleeting or lasting, shallow or deep, temporary or generational. Take the principles you've learned, apply them with diligence, and watch how your life transforms, not just financially, but in character, influence, and fulfillment. Your actions today will echo for years and perhaps for generations. So I leave you with a call to action. Begin now. Plant the seeds of discipline, learning, generosity, and vision. Build your assets, protect your wealth, invest in yourself, and teach those who will follow you. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Don't wait for inspiration to strike. Take control of your mornings, your decisions, and your financial life. Do the work. Embrace the principles, and let the compounding power of wise decisions shape your destiny. The wealth you seek is not a dream, it is a choice. Choose it, act on it, and build a life that lasts.